Thanks for listening to the best of the Martha Zoller Show. Don't forget to listen live on accesswdun.com and join my Substack at Martha Zoller with free and paid subscriber content exclusive to you. Follow me on X at Martha Zoller and join me every day. Joining me right now is Representative Buddy Carter, and we appreciate you being with us today. Welcome, Buddy.
Well, thank you for having me, Martha. Always a pleasure.
So before we get to the fact it's tax day and the IRS and all that, of course, the big news over the weekend was, we gave Iran $220 billion, and then they attacked Israel this weekend. I know they're not exactly connected, but they kind of are. Tell us what your thoughts are on this and about the president basically telling Israel or leaking a conversation where they tell Israel don't respond.
Well, I think that's poor advice. I mean, Israel has every right to defend themselves, and we believe that they should defend themselves. And to think that the $220 billion that was released to Iran hasn't been financing Hamas and Hezbollah and all the other groups that are causing terrorism in that region, it would be naive. Of course it is. Iran is behind that. We've known that for some time. Our intelligence community has made that perfectly clear to all of us. So this is a very serious situation, and this is what happens when you have weak leadership in the strongest nation in the world, and that is the United States of America. This president is perceived as being weak, and therefore these countries think they can do whatever they want to do, and essentially they're doing it right now. That's what's led to this, and it's very, very, very dangerous in our world right now.
So you believe, you got to believe what they say. And you have Israel, where Jordan shot down some of the drones. Their relationship is held strong. The relationship with Egypt is held strong. Saudi Arabia was quoted as saying after the attack that all of this has come about because they expressed their interest in normalizing relationships with Israel. It was announced last week that Israel is on its way to having a diplomatic relationship with Indonesia, the largest Muslim country in the world. So clearly the problem is not between Israel and Muslim countries. Clearly the problem is between Israel and radical Islamist countries that want to wipe it off the face of the earth.
And that's exactly right. And to give advice to Israel not to defend yourself, that's ridiculous. But there are those in Congress who would agree with that and who have been pushing the president to take that stance and to make that recommendation. That's very unfortunate, and I think it's very dangerous.
So do you think what's happened this weekend is going to help the Congress to move to do what they need to do to support Israel?
Well, that's a good question. And, of course, we have cleaned the slate. What was planned for this week has been canceled, and now we're going to be focusing entirely on Israel and entirely on Ukraine and the foreign funds that need to go to those countries. It's going to be an interesting week, to say the least, and the way that leadership in the House handles this will be very, very sensitive, to say the least. I do think that we can get funding for Israel through. I do think that we can do that. Now, the funding, if somehow he's able to do it by itself. But when you talk about the funding for Ukraine, that's just a different subject. Don't get me wrong. We understand how important Ukraine is. We understand that we cannot allow Putin to be successful. We are the leaders of democracy in the world, and we've got to make sure that Putin is not successful. But at the same time, there's still a strong feeling, a strong sense, in my opinion, in the House, particularly in our Republican conference, that unless we get funding for the southwest border, there's not going to be funding for Ukraine. And no loans either. I will tell you, I've been on text chain all weekend with my colleagues, and yeah, we're like-minded. That's why we're on the same text chain. But at the same time, I will tell you, there's a very, very strong feeling that these two need to be separated, the Israel funding and Ukraine funding.
Look, and I think we need also to rally around Mike Johnson. You know, whether you like him or not, he didn't initially ask for this job. Kevin McCarthy got better deals than Mike Johnson has been able to get, but he's also lost three members of Congress. So, you know, we've got to get through to this election, and we need the focus. Now, I'm just speaking as a get out the vote kind of grassroots activist, okay? We need the focus to be on Joe Biden and not on the inaction of Congress. And I'm not saying you should compromise. I'm not saying you should give in. I'm just saying we as grassroots activists need the focus to be on Joe Biden and not on the Congress.
And I couldn't agree with you more, and I appreciate you saying that, because this is important. What has happened at the southern border has been totally the responsibility of the executive branch in the Biden administration. He could solve this problem. Yes, Congress needs to act. I agree with that. And there are things that we could do that would also help. But at the same time, this is a problem that was created by this president. Keep in mind, we had the most secure border we've ever had under President Trump. I've been to the border 8 times in the last 10 years. The last time I was there was about 2 months ago, and I will tell you, this is in bad a shape right now as I've ever seen it. You could see the wall that was started by Obama, that was continued by Trump, and that was stopped by Biden. He stopped this wall. All he's got to do is to reinstate the stay in Mexico policy. All he's got to do is to end the catch and release. All he's got to do is to finish building that wall.
Well, and I tell you what,
he can do all that.
Buddy, say to your Democrat friends, and this always shuts them up because it shuts them up when I talk to them. I don't just talk about what Trump did at the border. I say President Obama and President Trump use the exact same laws that Joe Biden has. Obama was called the deporter in chief. And Biden won't deport people even that have gone through the court system. Okay, so you just say to your Democrat friends, you know what? We can have with these laws what we had then, and we need to move on from there. I know there's a lot of work that has to be done, and I think there are Democrats that understand what this problem is, but, man, it's hard to get them to talk about it. Listen, it is tax day. We don't want to forget that. I'm going to be going to pay my quarterly taxes when I leave here because I am a self-employed person, so I write that check every quarter. And what's your thoughts in the last couple of minutes we have about this being tax day?
Well, that's why we need the fair tax. Today is the day you ought to think about the fair tax. Today is the day you ought to think about you being in control instead of the IRS being in control. Today is the day you ought to think about doing away with the IRS, an unnecessary agency, if we have the fair tax, because the fair tax is a consumption tax. Everybody pays it. My Democratic friends are always saying, oh, the rich people, the billionaires, they don't pay their fair share. Well, let's put the fair tax in place. That way they will pay when they purchase something. And let me tell you, they purchase a lot. They purchase expensive things, and they pay taxes on those things. That's the way you make it more fair. And look, nobody likes paying taxes, but given the choice between a property tax, a payroll tax, people would prefer to pay a consumption tax where they can control it. And that's essentially what the fair tax is just a consumption tax.
Well, I mean, and honestly, our economy runs on consumption. I hate that, but it's true. And we ought to be able to get this in. You and I have been fair tax supporters for a very long time. And it now is the time to have this discussion, but also now is the time to mobilize people to make sure people get out to vote, parent their children, and start talking to people face to face.
And the reason for that is because elections have consequences. And the reason elections have consequences is because policies have consequences. We are suffering the consequences of the Biden administration's policies right now. You hit the nail on the head earlier when you said he has at his disposal the same laws that were on the book when Trump and Obama were in office. But he chooses not to enforce those laws.
Absolutely.
That's why we need a change in policy.
Representative Buddy Carter, thank you for always being available, and we appreciate you being with us today.
It's where North Georgia comes to talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Joining me right now is Consul General for the Southeastern United States for Israel, Anat Sultan Dadon. We welcome you back to the program. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me again.
So, of course, this weekend was shocking, not unexpected, but just give us an update on what you know today.
Well, what we saw was an unprecedented direct Iranian attack on Israel with hundreds of UAVs, ballistic missiles, and cruise missiles, which were launched from Iranian territory at Israel. We are pleased to say that the vast majority, roughly 99% of the missiles and aircraft were intercepted, both by Israeli Air Force, Israel's air defense system, as well as through the assistance of the military forces of a number of countries, of allies, chief among them the United States, of course, that are standing with Israel in our fight against Iran and its terror proxies in the region.
You know, I was pointing this out earlier today that Israel has relationships with Egypt, with Jordan. Their Saudi Arabian sources were quoted as saying this whole thing came about because they were getting ready to normalize relationships with Israel. There was information last week saying that Israel's on the path to normalizing relations with Indonesia. So those are all Muslim countries. Clearly, this is not a problem between Israel and Muslims. This is a problem between Israel and radical Islamic forces that want to destroy you. You know, that's
exactly right, and that is what we have seen also on October 7th. The attack 2 days ago is not detached from the massacre that we saw on October 7th. This attack now, Iran has unmasked itself after years of hiding behind its proxies, sowing terror through them, just like it did through Hamas and the terror attack of October 7th. But this is what their radical Islamist ideology is about. This is how they operate directly and indirectly through their proxies. Their goal is not a political one. Their goal is a genocidal one. Their enemy is the state of Israel. Their enemy is the Jewish people. And their enemy, more broadly, is all of us, the free world. All of us who hold dear the values to which they are starkly opposed.
Now, Hamas continues to not come to the table. They continue to not keep up their end of any bargain that they have made. They went as far as saying last week they don't think they can come up with 40 hostages to trade for 900 Palestinians. I know I'm paraphrasing, but we cannot forget the hostages in all of this. And every day that passes, it becomes less likely any of these hostages are ever going to be released.
We are today marking 192 days since October 7th. And the reason why we count in days is because our brothers and sisters being held hostage in Gaza are counting by the minutes. For them, October 7th and the horrors of October 7th are not over. We currently have still remaining 133 hostages in Gaza. We know that of these hostages, sadly, 36 of them are confirmed to be dead. They are holding on, Hamas is holding on to their bodies. But we know that time is of the essence. There is an urgency to bring them all home, ranging from 1-year-old baby, Kfir Bibas, all through to the men, the women, the elderly. There's an 86-year-old hostage being held captive still. We have 19 women in captivity. And we know from accounts of hostages that have been released that they are subjected to daily torture and rape. The world cannot be silent. We need for the call for their immediate and unconditional release to come from every nation on earth. This is not just an Israeli interest or an American interest. This is an international interest.
So there are protests still going on in free nations that are called pro-Palestinian protests. What do you think about that?
We are seeing, sadly, all around the world, here in the United States, here in Atlanta. Just today, there's yet another demonstration being organized And I think we all should be very, very clear because the wrong terminology is being used. Whenever these demonstrations are phrased as pro-Palestinian, it needs to be corrected. There is nothing pro-Palestinian about these demonstrators. Were these demonstrators to genuinely care about the Palestinian people, they would be standing with us in our efforts to defeat Hamas, to free Gaza from Hamas, because Hamas is not just an enemy to Israel. Hamas is an enemy to its own people. They are willingly using their own people as human shields, willingly sacrificing their own people in their goal to destroy Israel. Rather than invest in building a future for their people, they are investing everything that they have in lining their own pockets and in destroying Israel. And so the calls that we are hearing all around us for a ceasefire, those calls should be directed at Hamas. The war could be over today if they surrender, lay down their weapons, and release all of the hostages. And I think that anyone who sees these demonstrators, that is what they should be calling for, because what these demonstrators are really standing for, by supporting Hamas, they are standing for terror. And we have seen also not only these demonstrators calling for the elimination of the state of Israel through slogans such as "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," meaning no state of Israel. We have seen outside our consulate a demonstrator proudly waving the Hezbollah flag. What they clearly and proudly stand for is terror, and they need to be called out.
You know, our president has, in my view, had some mixed messages. It seems to me like he's more concerned about a few votes in Michigan than he is about a consistent Israeli policy. Now, we were very helpful on Saturday night during this attack, or on Saturday during this attack. It seems like they like to attack on Sabbath days. But I'm concerned when I hear a readout with a call from our president saying Israel should just take the win. They should just take the win against Iran and not worry about it anymore. I just find it very frustrating, the messages that I'm hearing from my own government.
I will say that we are incredibly grateful to the United States, who clearly stood by us in the face of this unprecedented attack by Iran. And I think that the message to Iran by the United States has been a very, very clear one. President Biden has stated clearly the United States' commitment to Israel's security, and we saw it also in action. Israel, like any other country, cannot accept threats made to our existence. We will not tolerate the threats that Iran declares and poses to us, and we will take the measures necessary in order to ensure the safety and security of our country and people, just like any other sovereign nation has the right and the responsibility to do.
Well, you know, I was listening to a report this morning where they were interviewing someone that was attending a wedding in Israel, and the day before they had been in uniform fighting, being prepared or fighting back Iran, and tomorrow they're going to be going back. But today they are celebrating a wedding of people that are looking to the future. Is that seems to me a good example of the way you and Israel have to live your lives?
The Israeli people are very resilient. We have not only a history of 75 years of the modern state of Israel, during which we continue to not only survive but thrive in a neighborhood that has not always been friendly to us. We are resilient also as a people, because our history as a people goes back thousands of years. And we have had so many enemies that sought to destroy us. They are confined now to the pages of history. So we know that just as we survived and thrived in the past, so we will today. And Israelis not only are determined to defeat the evils that seek to destroy us, we are determined to continue building, to continue succeeding. And I think that's one of the beautiful indicators also that highlights the resilience of the Israeli people is the Global Happiness Index. This is a survey that is published annually, and just a few weeks ago it was published, and this is a survey that was done after October 7th, and it's rated Israel as the 5th happiest country in the world. And I think that speaks to the resilience of the Israeli people.
Anat Sultan Dadon, thank you so much for being with us today. Any final thoughts you want to give to us before we say goodbye?
I am grateful for this opportunity, grateful to the American people, and I think that what is really important to remember, and this is why we have seen also the United States stand by us, Iran and the radical Islamist ideology that they stand for is not just a threat to Israel. It is a threat to all of us. And that is why we should not and we are not facing it alone. And so thank you and thank you to the United States for its support.
Thank you, Anat. We'll talk soon, and we'll see you in person soon.
Look forward to that. Thank you so much.
It's local radio, and that's why you're listening. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
They hired so many PR consultants to help the university presidents. How many people have they hired on campus to combat anti-Semitism?
It is the Martha Zoller Show. That is Elise Stefanik, one of the people that are being considered as President Trump's vice presidential pick. We don't know who that is. Only he knows who that is. But our next guest might know who it is, but he won't tell. Doug Ivester is here with me right now, and we're so happy to have you here, Doug. How are you?
I'm great, Martha. Thank you for having me here, and congratulations to WDUN on your 75th anniversary.
I know.
I'm thrilled.
It is fantastic, and we are here in this building called the Renaissance.
Correct.
And tell us a little bit about this project, this labor of love that you've done for the last several years.
Well, I walked around this square when I was a young child. I'd come from New Holland and walk around the square, and that continued all the way for my life. And I was walking one of my dogs around the square and looking at the parking lot that existed right here, and I was one of those people that said somebody needs to do something. And as I walked around the square one day, I realized that somebody was me. And from that point forward, it was a rapid movement. We bought the land, we designed the building, we signed a contract, we started working on very strategic tenants to occupy the place and strategic relationships. And what you see is the building today. I love every part of it.
Now, I remember a number of years ago when you were still with Coca-Cola, and Dan and Shondell Summer did the Coca-Cola sign over on the other side of the square, on the side of their building, and you came to help a little bit with that. It's been a labor of love here in Hall County. You've never really left. I mean, even though you traveled the world and you did all kinds of things business-wise, you've just always been a Hall County guy.
I have, and my wife is. Kay
Yes.
is from Hall County as well. I remember the sign. I paid for the sign, by the way.
Good.
And
Thank you.
I remember some local people coming and helping us celebrate that day. It was a great, great day. And one of the best days of my life was walking the torch in 1996 around the square and being able to celebrate the Olympics in Gainesville and in Hall County. And it was a thrilling day that I still remember.
You know, I was in the junior league then, and we were helping with the hospitality, and the place where we kind of got our assignments every day was at the Norton Agency. You know, you went in and they told you where you needed to be that day and all of that sort of thing. And it was just such a labor of love, not only in Atlanta, which, you know, there was just great. I mean, it was a great event, although I think they lied about the weather. I remember when they were pitching for the Olympics, Billy Payne said something like, well, the average temperature in August is 77 degrees or something like that. I mean, I remember thinking at the time, okay, he's putting the best face on this weather, and it was extremely hot. But it was some of the best times, really, that we had because it went so well. We were called the hospitality hub of the South.
Well, I had the opportunity to run the torch anywhere in America because our company sponsored it and actually designed the route. So I got to pick and choose what I wanted to do. And I chose the square in Gainesville as the place. I could have run in Atlanta or any place I really wanted to, but I wanted to run in Gainesville. And it proved to be the best decision of the Olympics that we made. We had such a good time up here. People were so wonderful, and I have fond memories of it even today.
So we're here in this fantastic building. There's been great improvement all the way around the square compared to where it was, say, 15 years ago. But what do you think should be our vision as we move forward? Because you should never be stagnant. What should our vision be as we move forward?
Well, I specifically named this building the Gainesville Renaissance because I was looking to spark a renaissance of the square on the basis that if we had a renaissance of the square, we would have a renaissance of the city. I believe to date that is proving to be the case, and I'm thrilled with the progress of the building and around the square. I think it must continue. And I've communicated that to the mayor, the former mayor, city council members, anybody up here who will listen to me. I've communicated that the advance of the square is strategic to the advance of the city and the county. So I'm looking for a plan, and I think the city has one, to completely renovate the square, make it more inviting, more important, and I want it to be the central place for people in Hall County and really in North Georgia together.
Well, and one of the things that allows us to continue to be independent from Metro Atlanta is the fact we have WDUN and 24-hour news here in this community. There were a lot of places in Gwinnett and Cobb County and in other metro counties that had radio stations, but they've been gobbled up over time. And this particular venture that has been a part of this community now for 75 years is part of the reason why we have been able to maintain our independence from Metro Atlanta while still being close enough to utilize the airport, close enough to utilize the events. I think it's really a very important part.
I can't tell you how important and how strategic I think it is for WDUN to be located in the Gainesville Renaissance building and on the square. It is a key element of the Renaissance that I'm looking for. And I'm thrilled with Jay Jacobs and Anna and the decision makers that helped make the decision to come here. It was extremely important, and I'm appreciative of it.
So I grew up in Atlanta, and my husband and I moved here to Gainesville in 1990. He had grown up here. He went to Gainesville High School, and I know you went to East Hall, but you won't hold that against him. But what was interesting is I've always joked with people. I say I'm from Atlanta. I drink Coke and I fly Delta, and so it's there is a boosterism, isn't there, with whether it's Atlanta or even the wider Metro Atlanta area, where we do a great job of propping up our own.
We take care of our own. We take care of our family. We take care of our friends. It's a Southern tradition, and it's a Southern trait that I think is a positive one. But I think it's awfully important to take care of family and friends. By the way, I went to North Hall, not East Hall.
Okay, sorry.
Kay went to East Hall.
Okay.
So we're a divided household.
Oh yeah. But that's even more of a rivalry.
But I have very fond memories of growing up from Gainesville and Hall County and North Hall, and I heard from two of my high school classmates that I graduated with this morning.
Wow.
I'm sure they're listening in right now, and a shout out to them. Thank you for staying friends all these years.
Yeah, one final question. I know that when I was working in the corporate world, sometimes people had assumptions about me because of my Southern accent, and it actually was an advantage when I was making deals because they kind of assumed I wasn't as smart as I actually was. Did you ever have that experience?
I had that experience in abundance, and I'd say I particularly had it when I first went to the company. It was an advantage to me. It later became a particular advantage as I was doing business in New York, because the New Yorkers always had an attitude toward the South, and I promoted that attitude because it was to my advantage to do so, and I felt good about it.
Doug Ivester, thank you so much for being with me today.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you very much, and congratulations to you on your current award as well.
Putting the talk in news talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Joining me right now is Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota. It has been a very long time since she and I have talked. I interviewed her when she was a congresswoman many years ago, and it's so great to talk to you again today. Governor Noem, thank you for being here.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you for inviting me to celebrate with you. Congratulations on your 75th anniversary and brand new building and all kinds of exciting things going on in your world today.
Well, Governor Noem, I love the commercials you're doing. I mean, those are just wonderful, and especially the one that you're doing most recently about construction, where you said, we'll just call that a skylight. That is just hysterical. Where did that idea come from?
You know, actually, the ideas came from me for these commercials. We had, for 2.5 years after COVID got over, and South Dakota stayed open and made very different decisions than other states. You know, we had hundreds of businesses and tens and thousands of people moving to South Dakota, but we were growing so fast, and we found that everybody was working. We were breaking the national historic unemployment rate. We were at the lowest ever at 1.7%. And everywhere I went, business owners were saying, we could expand if we could get the workers. We could do incredible things if we just had enough help. And I said, you know, we need to solve this problem, tell our story, tell people how wonderful South Dakota is, what we're doing on apprenticeship programs, our wages, how we can train people. Let's run some commercials where I'm filling in, and I'm very bad at it, and I need help. So you've probably seen me be a plumber, an electrician, a nurse. The latest one is me building homes where I accidentally knock over a wall, and it's me doing a lousy job at a lot of things, but people are responding to those commercials and moving to South Dakota to live the American dream. It's really fantastic.
You know, it wasn't that long ago that South Dakota had Tom Daschle as a senator, and he used to travel around. He was famous for traveling around for 2 weeks on the congressional breaks and go from town to town. And now South Dakota is solidly, he was a Democrat, South Dakota is solidly Republican. What happened there? How did that transformation happen? Did the parties change or did the people change?
You know, I would say the people still here are very populist. You know, we tend to elect people, and we like people that work hard for us and focus on our state. You know, we become more Republican as far as party registration. Independents are becoming a large growing group in South Dakota. The Democrat Party is losing a lot of registered voters. I would say that, yes, when I first got involved in government and politics, Tom Daschle was the Senate Majority Leader. I started showing up at his meetings. I was passionate about tax reform. When I ran for Congress, we still had a Democrat U.S. Senator in Tim Johnson. I ran against a Democrat. So a lot of people think South Dakota has always been this very conservative state. I would say we've been fairly conservative, but yes, we elect a lot of Democrats too. And so that's why it's important to continue to show people that when you follow conservative policies, good things happen. And that's why leadership matters. It matters who you elect to represent you and to fight for you, because it has a dramatic effect on every single family that lives in your state and in your community.
Doug Ivester, you were so kind to connect me or reconnect me with Governor Noem. You know, what is it that you think is so important about the kind of leadership she shows?
Well, good morning, Governor. It's a pleasure to hear you, Doug, in my small town here on the radio station that I've listened to my entire life. It is extremely impressive how the governor runs her state and how she takes her message across the country. And Kay and I have tried to be supportive of that for a number of years now. But her heart's in the right place, and that's a start. And her intellect is in the right place, and the state is showing the results of that intellect and that good heart.
Well, thank you, Doug. Doug and Kay have been absolutely fantastic to be friends of mine and Brian's for many years and supporters. We did a lot of stuff here in South Dakota very aggressively. I tend to make decisions quickly, and I ran with a platform to be the governor of South Dakota, to build businesses, to diversify the economy, to create more opportunities, help our state grow. We had kind of been dying before that. People were leaving our state, and we needed to turn it around. So I've been pushing pretty hard, but South Dakota has responded extremely well, and we've loved it. We're thriving. We're building infrastructure and cutting taxes and giving people more freedom, and our people are happier. We're the only state in the country whose mental health challenges, suicide rates, our overdoses have gone down the last 2 out of the 3 years. So even though we've embraced all these conservative policies and been aggressive on pushing our economy, we've shown that if you give people more freedom, they're happier and they love it and they want to live somewhere just like South Dakota.
So we're talking to Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota, and you are a rising star in the Republican Party. You've been putting the work in. You didn't just show up yesterday, right? Talk to us a little bit about what you see as the goals we need policy-wise in the Republican Party as you look at what we have to do in November.
I would say that what we need to do is to talk to people and to get out there and to visit with folks and find out how their lives are doing, what they're paying for their grocery store prices and what their bills look like, energy prices. We can't get distracted by things that are a political agenda to divide America. I think overwhelmingly people still want leaders who care about them and who listen to them. And we saw over the last few years this country change dramatically. And I'm going to be spending a lot of time in some swing states here in the next several months, in Michigan and Wisconsin, in Ohio, Georgia, Arizona, Pennsylvania, those states that we need to win back the White House, and talk with folks about really what their life is like and what has dramatically changed, and that they have a real choice in what comes out of Washington, D.C. and how it impacts their family and their future. So we're seeing a lot of unrest and a lot of division. People need to know that the American dream is still alive and that there are places in this country that don't reflect Joe Biden's America. And that's because we've rejected it and continued down our own path of embracing what our founders envisioned for our country. So, I think most of the time I run into people and they're telling me what to do and telling me what to say and where to go and to work, and I will do that and continue to do that. But I would encourage everybody listening to your radio station that it's kind of their job too. We need to win the hearts and minds of people. And instead of yelling at each other and arguing, why don't we sit down and have coffee and listen to people that we've disagreed with for many years, and then start talking about their everyday challenges that they face and which president in the White House is really going to bring them the most help. Because I know overwhelmingly when it gets down to policies and how it impacts families, it's President Trump's vision for this country that really keeps America strong.
Well, we had the opportunity to speak to him a couple of weeks ago and talk to him about the empowerment zones and enterprise zones he really lit up, I tell you, when he was talking about that particular policy. But one of the things I think is really important about what you said is that I tell my listeners all the time, you got to get out and vote. Then you need to be good parents to your children and grandchildren. And then you need to have face-to-face conversations with people. If we can do those three things, we can get things back on track, because the average person is not that person screaming on social media. The average person is getting up and going to work every day.
That's exactly right. And one of the things that people have always said to me about our kids is they said, man, you've got fantastic kids. How did your kids turn out when you were so busy working in Congress and stuff? And I said, we just had this rule that we had to be together, and that kids understand their parents and what they're doing and what they believe if they're spending time together, having conversations. It's the same way with your neighbors, with the people you go to church with, the people that you work with. And I just believe that if we spend time together having those conversations, it's powerful, and it will encourage people to go back to the policies of President Trump, because those are the ones that kept this country strong and thriving.
It's where North Georgia comes to talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
It is always great to talk to Congressman Clyde. And Andrew, thank you so much for the shout out on the House floor yesterday.
Well, you're very welcome. It was my pleasure. WDUN is a very, very important radio station in the 9th District. Y'all do phenomenal work, and I thought it needed a little bit of congressional recognition.
Well, at least you got something done yesterday, right?
Yes, and actually we did get something else done, too. We passed my 5th bill on the House floor. It was a pretty good bill. Standing against the Houthi Aggression Act, it redesignated the Houthis as a foreign terrorist organization, something President Trump had done that President Biden undid, and so it required Congress to step in and redesignate the Houthis as a foreign terrorist organization.
Well, I mean, really, that's a tale of two presidencies, right? The things that President Trump did and the things that President Biden has undone, and we're in a lot of the mess that we're in because of that. Now, Speaker Johnson did put forward some standalone aid bills. Tell us a little bit about that and your thoughts about it.
Well, there are 3 standalone aid bills. One is for Taiwan. The other one is for Israel, and then the third one is for Ukraine. But then he actually put forth a 4th bill. Well, there's a 4th bill for basically TikTok, but a 5th bill, I'll call it, which is a border bill that was split from those 3 aid bills, and that's a problem. I mean, here we have the Ukraine aid bill that includes $481 million for refugee aid, $7.8 billion for Ukrainian budget support, $300 million for the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine, and also, this bill has the ability to be completely forgiven by the President of the United States. You know, half of it after November of 2024, and the rest of it after January of 2026. So, you know, the fact that they're putting out that it's going to be a loan, that's all smoke and mirrors, Martha. And it's wrong. I hate when Congress does that. But this is not a good bill. We are giving up our last amount of leverage in order to secure our southern border. When H.R. 2, the Secure the Border Act, was split from the Ukraine aid bill, we recognized that our speaker is more interested in funding Ukraine than he is in securing our southern border. And that shouldn't be. That's an America last position, not an America first position.
So what about the other 2 on Israel and Taiwan? What are your thoughts on those?
Well, the Israel bill went from like $14 or $15 billion up to $26 billion. And the difference is $9.5 billion in aid through USAID for Gaza. So if you want to just talk about that a little bit, that's aid for Hamas. Here we are funding $9.5 billion in humanitarian aid to Hamas because now they don't have to spend any money on food. They can spend all their money against Israel. So here we are funding Hamas and funding Israel in the same bill? No, absolutely not. And then these bills have to be paid for, Martha. We could pay for these bills by rescinding advance appropriations like the IRS, like the Green New Deal, like the Inflation Reduction Act. There's so much advance appropriated money in those bills that could be rescinded so we could pay for this. Unless these bills are paid for, that's strike one against them. Number 2, you have the aid to Gaza, which would funnel directly to Hamas. That's strike 2. And then you've got all of this non-military aid going to Ukraine. These just aren't good bills.
And what about the Taiwan bill?
The Taiwan bill, not terrible, that's for sure. But only like $2 billion is going to Taiwan from the bill, from what I have seen so far. I haven't got completely through that bill yet. It just came out yesterday, so I'm still working on my 72 hours to read all the bills. But I definitely will get through all of them. But the issue here is he's combining. We're having separate votes, but he's combining them all together at the very end. This is nothing different. This is nothing other than an omnibus of foreign aid with border security divorced from it, and all of our leverage to secure our southern border gone. And that's not a way to run the House.
Well, and it's very frustrating because ever since the vacate of Kevin McCarthy, it's been a mess. I mean, if you look back at what Kevin McCarthy was trying to accomplish, he actually, and I'm not criticizing Speaker Johnson, he had a difficult situation. He's lost members of the House since he took over. I'm just stating the fact that Kevin McCarthy did a better job keeping the caucus together than Mike Johnson has been able to do. But I don't know if it serves our purpose or it helps us in any way to get into a big floor fight about vacating Mike Johnson between now and the election. I think we need to keep our eye on what's important, which is winning bigger majorities in November for the House, winning back the Senate, and winning the presidency.
Well, I will tell you that if we lose the House, I mean, you're absolutely right that the main focus has to be November. If we lose the House and we gain the presidency back, which I believe we will gain the presidency back, you will have nonstop impeachments of the president in the House if under a Democrat-controlled House with Hakeem Jeffries as the Speaker of the House. And that would be an absolute disaster for America right there. So we need to be focused on that. Now, also, one of the things that I learned in one of our committee hearings this week is that there is going to be a significant focus on illegal aliens registering and voting. That is one of the two reasons that you see the massive influx of illegals at the southern border and why Secretary Mayorkas has so encouraged the southern border invasion. They want these people to register to vote. They want these people to vote. There are flyers being posted throughout a lot of these NGO places that talk about don't forget to vote for President Biden when you get to America.
Well, it's a mess, and it seems to be getting worse every day. How do you feel about the motion to vacate Speaker Johnson?
Well, I'm not there yet, but I will tell you that we have to see how his leadership moves forward. This is going to be a tough time. You have him giving up our leverage on the half omnibus, or the two-part omnibus, actually, and then you have losing the vote on FISA, on the reauthorization of FISA, where the Warrants Amendment was defeated, and literally Speaker Johnson's vote was the deciding vote right there. And now you've got this Ukraine aid ahead of our southern border, securing our southern border. So I don't know what conservative wins we've got here, Martha.
Well,
this is a huge issue.
It's a huge issue, and I got to tell you, I'm with you. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm not happy. Do you know what I mean? There are a lot of moving parts, and yesterday what we saw was another consequence of the over 400,000 Republicans that didn't get back out and vote in the 2021 runoff, which led to the Senate being in Democrat control when the Mayorkas impeachment became kind of a joke where we brought it over, you guys voted on it, it was taken over, but then it was not dealt with in the Senate.
You're absolutely right. And Mayorkas basically ended up laughing at us. So I think the solution here, and we'll see if Mike Johnson is open to this, the solution is to impeach him again, send it over to the Senate, and continue to impeach him and send it over to the Senate until the Senate holds a trial. That is their constitutional responsibility, to hold a trial. Nowhere in the Constitution does it allow them to declare the articles of impeachment unconstitutional. That has never been done before. Per the Constitution, they are required to hold a trial. So we need to hold them to what the Constitution says they are supposed to do. And so I think we simply need to impeach Mayorkas again and send over new articles of impeachment.
Congressman Andrew Clyde, we appreciate you being with us today. Thank you so much for always being available.
Thank you, Martha. Always great to be with you.
To hear the full versions of last week's Martha Zoller shows, go to the podcast page at accesswdun.com, and you can follow me on social media at Martha Zoller.